Okay, so we definitely got to make another part on this one. Okay, so this is a follow-up from another part, but it's like they're branching out into multiple different discussions. So these are supposed to be a conversation, okay? So we're going back and forth. So share your ideas with me. These are all conceptual. It's about Sonic's future. We can't see the gameplay or anything. However, I can show you some gameplay of a Sonic Frontiers on that little hedgehog over there. However, we're going to talk about my idea for a new Sonic game, but also, I guess in this case, Sonic Frontiers 2. Because Azuka said he wants to build on the open zone format. Now, also, I gotta say, before we really go into some ideas, Sega legally cannot take my ideas, okay? They can't copy paste them. So these are suggestions, right? It's kind of like a general target. That's why I want to make these videos collaborative. It feels kind of silly to speak with, you know, finality and definitive statements. I want to chat with you guys and get to know you guys. Okay, so my last part, right? It was a little unclear, and I totally understand the comments I got. And I also want to show you guys some of my favorite comments from the last part. And they're going to cycle through as I go through. If you don't understand my explanation, check out these guys, because this is what inspired this part. So take a read of those if you don't really understand my explanation. But basically, it was unclear where I wanted the boost to be when it came to the open zone environment. So let me, you know, elaborate on that whole idea. So like I was saying in the last part, I want the open zones, as we know them now, to be considered the stages, right? Only because I think they need more of a stage mentality in their design. But they're still explorative. You're finding secrets. They are the hub, so to speak. But I want that to be the kind of like main stage, and then there's challenges within that, and these will kind of replace what we know now as the cyberspace things. And so it's going to be boost gameplay in there. However, when you go to replay them, say you have a completed save file in this hypothetical game, let's call it Sonic Charged, and I'll explain where that comes from later, or Sonic Spark. I'll explain that later though. So you have little sparks, right? And when you go to them, you can kind of like relive a moment, and whatever this story is about. I really like the boost formula. In these comments, it explains it a bit, because the boost formula works really well with cinematic scenes, right? We saw it a lot in Forces, a little bit in Frontiers, I believe. But because it's a little bit more restrictive, it allows cinematics to kind of play out in front of you, right? Like there's so many bosses that are on rails, but their animations can be more dynamic because you can control where the player is looking. Whereas in more expansive, like open zones, it's kind of harder to, you know, predict where the player is going to look and be. And so it's very cinematic and it flows well, as long as it doesn't stop speedrunners from either skipping the scenes or from, you know, speed running through the scenes. We don't want them to draw out too long and prevent speed running, right? Or, you know, find a way to disable them, right? So in this Sonic Spark or Sonic Charged, right? I want this to kind of like synergize with the inevitable, you know, visual representation of energy in the Sonic movie 3 is going to be, you know, lightning with Shadow, and it's already been that with Knuckles, and it's been that with Sonic. I want to use this game to clarify that that's like energy and not actual like static or electricity, where it'll like, you know, have a lot of electrical effects on the environment around them. And so in this game, I feel like it'd be cool if it was about like Sonic's excitement, right? And it's just a visual representation of when you can boost. Now, in these kind of narrative-based challenges that'll be the boost stages as we currently know them, we will be able to, we'll be glowing or charged, however we want to, you know, represent it visually. But then you'll have access to the boost, and you'll still have access to the boost in the opens up hub in the same way. However, because it's based on Sonic's excitement or like score point or boost, it's based on how many things you interact with. And that allows the designers of the open zone to dictate and control the flow of what the player is learning as they're going through the open zone, which allows it to do that narrative thing I was speaking on the last part, where they can control where the player is looking in the open zone world. But then we have things like the combat, right? The combat, I think it'd be really cool, and I have this idea where Sonic can kind of taunt, and it's depending on the intelligence level of his enemy, right? He'd be able to taunt, and then it could actually charge him up more. But again, that's only based, it's in controlled situations, so it allows the open zone to still be designed around Sonic's movement, so it's still visually pleasing, doesn't have those like rails in the sky because of the long stretch of land that Boost needs. And obviously the charged idea fits into the combat. I guess I gotta make a whole video about the combat system next, because it seems like that's where the conversation's going next. Did I do it? I think I did. Oh, I didn't talk about stories. But wait. The best battles are tied to stories. I think I know what the next part is. Peace.